Hello and welcome to the third things I've learned this week, starting with something I fell in love with, and it's the import this module. This is gonna print a set of rules and guidelines about proper good programming, let's say behaviors, habits that you want to build into. And if you're a beginner like me, just learning for yourself, you might just see that and be like, yeah, this is definitely something I can relate to because I've committed a lot of mistakes that this is trying to make me avoid. I just love that this exists, and yeah, thank you, Team Peters. Then let's go to the F string. So F strings are not that complicated of a concept. Basically, I think anyone just roaming YouTube came across it, but I didn't come across it that fast, so I figured I would talk about it a little bit. So given two variables, one for the name and one for numbers, you can add them in a string. So I'm gonna have my string and put curly brackets with the number of the variable I want to put in there. Okay, we're gonna come into that later on. Then we keep on with the string and add the curly brackets and the next variable we're gonna put on. Then we add after the string a dot format method that is gonna take as many arguments as we have variables to put in. So here my name and number arguments are gonna be put in the string in order of appearance, because we have 0, which refers to the first value of my format function, and then 1, which refers to the second argument in my format function. If I reverse them like so, I'm gonna get number in the place of name and name in the place of number. Finally, if I don't put anything in the curly brackets, format is just gonna basically put them in order, starting 0 then 1. Interesting to note, because if you have more than two variables, or if one variable has to appear multiple times, then putting the numbers in is essential, and obviously you get your three sentences in the way that we expected. So I am Captain Usopp, commander of 5,000 men, Captain 5,000, commander of Usopp men, and then just the same thing again. What is nice with F string? Well, you just add an F before your string, okay, and just like with the format method, you just add curly brackets, and instead of references, you just put your variable in them, and this makes everything so much clearer and easier to read. It's easier to come back and take care of your code later on, and yeah, it's got a few more properties that I invite you to check out in the documentation. But it's just easy as that. You have this basic line of code that's gonna return the exact string you needed. So yeah, just like use F strings, it's cool. Then list comprehension, just keeping on with it a little bit because I had a little issue with it trying to put conditions in my filtering and filtering, sorry, my list comprehension. So as an example, we know that if we create an empty list, we can iterate through a range 10 and test it out with a modulo 2 to just have the pair values of this range. Okay, this is just basic coding, like one of your first things you're gonna learn. So if I do that, I get my 0, 4, 16, 36, and 64 relating to 0, 2, 4, 6, and 8 in my range 10, just filtering out every odd values of this range, okay? Obviously 10 not included as usual. If I wanted to do a list comprehension of that, well, as usual, I would go first my open bracket, then the value I want to insert, so the square of x, then I define what that x is, iterating through an iterable object, range 10, and finish with a condition that is filtering it. So if x modulo 2 equals 0, doing this, I'm just gonna do exactly the same thing as before and add every value that is not odd in this list, filtering out everything that is odd. But what if I wanted to put an if-else statement in there? So in this code, I do the exact same thing, in the range 10, checking out if the value is pair or not. But here, instead of just filtering them out, I want to add an error message every other value. So what's this gonna do? Well, just every other value add an error message instead of nothing. And I wanted to do that with this list comprehension and stupidly just did this. Else error. Okay, just thinking that if I have an if statement here, I can just use an else statement afterwards. But no, this gives me an invalid syntax saying my else statement is a problem. Why so? Well, because if you want to use this this nomenclature, you're gonna have to go through this. The new organization of your information is gonna be for an x squared that you want as your value in your new list. You're gonna check out if it's pair and then have your else statement. So first the value, okay, then your condition, and then your iterable object. And if you go this way, then it works and you've got your error message every other value. Note though that if I remove the else statement and I run it again, I've got an invalid syntax because this syntax relates to an if-else statement, a complete test. If you want to filter out the values, you use the other statement, which is going to be just an if at the end of your list comprehension. I don't want to go deeper into that on the reason why it's like that, because I just came across this problem, so maybe another time. But for now, just making this yours is going to be as useful for you as at least it's useful for me, I guess. So yeah. And finishing up with the filter function. Filtering is something I came across with all those basic Python stuff that you learn to begin with, but I came across an exercise that actually made me realize how interesting it was. So let's take the filter function that is going to take two arguments, one function and one iterable object. Why is that? It's because the filter function is going to test every object in your iterable object and check out if it fits the requirements of your function. So inherently it means your function has to return a boolean value that is true or false, right? Because if your iterable object through that function is true, it's going to stay in your output, in your filter. If it's false, it's going to be out of your object. So my first example is going to go through this very basic function that is just going to be testing every value and see if it's equal to 10. Okay, using that writing return value equal 10 means that if the value is not equal to 10, then you return false, and if it is, you return true. Let's create a list that is a range 20, so 0 to 19, 20 excluded as usual, and I'm going to use my filter method, filter function, on my value1 function and the list of range 20. But what kind of object is that filter object that I'm going to create, right? What is it? So I'm going to print the type of this filter object and the filter object itself. And what you're going to get is a class filter, which is itself, it's like a zip object if you've tried that. And then you see that if you print it, you don't get a list, you just get a filter object. So what you need to do to get the result of this is do a list of it, okay? So if I do a list of my filter, I get 10. Why? Well, just like we said before, every value from 0 to 19 went through that function. Every value that is not 10 is going to return false, so it's going to be filtered out of my list, meaning that my new object is going to be just 10. Okay. Next example is just the opposite way. Instead of being super specific, we're going to be a little more open. So this positive function is just going to check whether or not the value, the iterable of my filter here, are equal or superior to 0. So I'm gonna filter through my positive function the list that is still range 20. Okay, so what do I get? Well, logically, if I do that, I filter nothing, right? Because if I filter 20 numbers that are all starting from 0 up to 19, all of them are going to be above 0, and all of them are going to return true from that function, and so I'm going to filter absolutely nothing in that list, okay? And then we have the case that actually made me realize how interesting filtering could be, because here I'm not going to go through values like numbers, but I'm going to check out if a value is in a string. Okay, so here what I want to do is check if every object is a vowel. Okay, so if the object is a vowel, I return true. So A, E, I, O, U, Y. If it is not, I return false. So if I have a sentence like tonight we dine in hell, and I want to filter it with my isVowel function, the output is simply gonna be every vowel of my string. Okay. I could do that with anything. I could include punctuation. I could include like any kind of symbol. Like, yeah, this is gonna just check out if the thing is in my list and keep it. So it's a good way to filter it thanks to a list of things you want to filter, not just by thanks to a mathematical test like before. So yeah, I think now you have a good grasp of what the filter function is. Just as a final little note, let's go through what's going to happen if you don't use any function, if you just put none instead of the function. Well, we saw it earlier. The goal of the filter function is to keep whatever is true according to your function. If you don't have a function, then it's directly the object that is going to be considered by the filter function. So here, what's going to happen? First object is going to be a 1. 1 doesn't go through any function, so the filter is going to be, oh, okay, so the result is 1. 1 is a boolean true value, so I keep it. Then I have 0. 0 is not going to go through any function, so filter is going to consider it directly. So filter is going to say, 0 is a false boolean value, so I count it out of my object. Same thing with true. Obviously true is true, right? And then false. Obviously false is false itself. And then, like any other value, hello, 1234, inherently are true boolean values, because anything that is not false or 0 is a true boolean value. So that means that with a none as an argument, your filter is just going to filter every true value in your list, returning 1 true, hello, and 1234. Just easy as that. So yeah, that's all for today. It surely helps me to go back through those things after coming across them, and I hope it might help some other people too. So yeah, see you soon. Bye.